The special forces guys, the special forces dudes were on a patrol and they rolled their vehicle over. The vehicle flipped over, and so we got spun up to drive out there with the big wrecker to to get tow the flipped over vehicle back to their base. So we get out there, we drive out there, and these special forces guys, like I say, and we're geared up in our regular Army gear, and these guys are just long beards and baseball caps. I call them the long beards. They're just whatever tactical gear they want, rifles all decked out, ball caps, beards, sunglasses, looking all cool. And so me and old Stu were just kind of standing guard, as the wrecker's doing its thing with the vehicle. And this long beard walks up and he's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" Make a little small talk. And I'm like, "How you doing? How you doing, sir?" I didn't know his rank. The guy could be a colonel for all I know. And I remember he's got an auburn cap atop his long, dark feathered hair and a beard. And so after we got through, shooting the breeze, he said, "I want to talk to you about some stuff going on in this AO, area of operation." And he said, "I hear you guys do a lot of BDA missions, battle damage assessment." The battle damage assessment was my most hated mission because basically, to make it simple, the enemy fires rockets at the base, and then an infantry, they have some kind of radar that can actually pick up where this rocket fired from. And so the enemy fires rockets, and then an infantry platoon would drive straight out to where the rocket was fired from. And sometimes they fire their rockets on timers, right? It fires off of a timer. They're luring us out. They know we're coming out. So now we're just setting a pattern. This is another leadership failure. Like, the enemy might be stupid, but they're not that stupid. They know that if they fire a rocket, we're driving straight out there with them with 4 vehicles, 30 dudes. It ain't no big presence. So they fire the rockets. We're driving out there, and so a lot of times they would booby trap, or anyway they would set traps. So the special forces soldier, he's like, "I hear you guys do a lot of BDA missions," and I said, "Yes, sir, we do." And he goes, "Well, y'all need to be a little more careful. Y'all need to be careful doing those." And I said, "Sir," I said, "don't you think doing a BDA mission every time we take fire sets a pattern?" And he says, "Well, that's what I'm getting at, son." He said, "The enemy's starting to set traps. They're starting to booby trap the point of origin, the poo site, point of origin. They're starting to booby trap the poo sites. They're booby trapping them. They're setting up ambushes." He said, "We had a guy get killed on a BDA, and another dude lost his leg. And hell, the special forces dude telling you that if it happened to them, it damn sure gonna happen to a grunt." And he just hit that. He just kept hitting it home. He's like, "You guys really need to be careful on these BDA missions." And I'm like, "Yes, sir." Made a little small talk. So then, November the 4th, they start peppering the base with rockets, 5 Boris. And I'm sitting by the Duke. The Duke, he was a team leader in the platoon. I'm sitting by the Duke, and I'm like, and these rockets are coming, and we know we're going to go out. We know what time it is. And I told the Duke, I said, "Man," I said, "these BDA missions are fucked up." And he said, "Yeah, man, I hear you." And I said, "You know what those SF dudes told me on the last one?" And I regurgitated the story, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I hear you." And I mean, I just had a bad feeling. I was feeling nervous. And I told him, I said, "I don't feel good about this, man." He goes, "I hear you." And that's when I looked in the room behind me, and old Julian's just sitting in a lounge chair, just sleeping like no care in the world. Like, I'm nervous as hell to go on this mission that, I've been warned by the special forces guys. I'm looking back at Julian, and he's just sleeping. So we get the vehicles ready. We gear up to go. And so I was a gunner for this mission. So I was gunning a 240, be like a modern M60. And so we was on a patrol. We had 4 vehicle patrol. I was in the 4th and last vehicle, so my machine gun was facing backwards. And behind me was 4 pickup trucks with A&A guys. A&A guys just sitting in the back, RPGs and stuff. So we're leading the patrol, obviously, and they're following us. So we drive out there, and in this area that we're going to, it's a wadi, just straight up, just valley. I mean, you look to the left and to the right, all you seen was hills, and to one side was just calots, houses, just rows of houses, and the other side was woods, just woods, and there was a lot of choke points. When you're trying to be tactical and do this right, you might when you want to spread out. That's what kind of keeps you safe. But we couldn't be tactical. The choke points. It would just narrow you in. Like the whole patrol would have to, like, I don't know, squeeze it into an hourglass, and everybody has to almost vehicles, and everybody kind of had to single file in there through the choke point to where they could really hit you, and then try to spread back out. So once we get knee deep into there, after the enemies lured us in, uh, an IED pops off. So the first vehicle hits an IED, and that was the Duke. The Duke was the commander of that vehicle, and that vehicle hits an IED. And then simultaneously, almost immediately, RPG just that second vehicle right into the driver's side door of the second vehicle. And that was the vehicle Julian was driving. Lieutenant Troutman was sitting shotgun in that vehicle. So basically, the IED was the signal the attacks. Basically, hitting the IED, that signaled the enemy. That was, and as soon as that happened, they laid it in thick. They had us surrounded on three sides. We were outnumbered, surrounded on three sides. They were firing small arms fire, RPGs, the heavy machine gun, with a Dishka, their version of the 50 cal. They were firing heavy machine gun and mortars. And then these mortars were like exploding before they hit the ground. They're trying to get the gunner. And this is, so at this point, I'm the fourth vehicle. After that second rocket hit, I just got down on that 240 and I just started going, baby. At that point, I'm just searching, traversing the hillside. I'm firing that thing, left, right, up and down. Just, because the thing about machine gun fire is called suppressive fire. So what infantry 101, you get shot at. If you're a machine gunner, you take fire, suppressive fire, right? You just, either you're trying to get their head down, make them go away, or kill them. So I started firing up that machine gun, which obviously makes you a target. Like any World War II movie that you watch, you got to get that machine gun nest because he's doing all the damage. Like you got to get that German or Japanese machine gun nest, because that's the one doing the damage. So the the mortars and the RPGs and all that was coming my way, and so I was spraying that machine gun. I had, that heavy metal in my head, Motorhead, shoot them down, shoot them down. I mean, I kept just in my head, old Lemmy singing, shoot them down to the ground. And I was just firing away, shoot them down to the ground. Whenever I seen people moving or running around up in the valley or the tree line, I just laid that hammer down and dropped that. And then, whenever he hit the ground, we call it a double tap. As soon as he hit the ground, I double tap that ass to make sure he was done. And so then, this is always chaotic. It's crazy. It's just a lot of chaos. It's not, it's more chaotic than organized. So then, I look ahead, and Brandon and Blackie are in a vehicle in front of me, and Blackie's firing the Mark 19, which is an automatic grenade launcher, and he's just lobbing those grenades into the houses. And you hear the launch, like you hear the boom, boom, boom. You hear the fire, doop, 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 pause, boom, 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 where the impact is. And so Brandon, like I say, probably the bravest man who I ever seen personally in my experience. So Brandon was the MRAP driver. Blackie was gunning that Mar 19. So Brandon just climbs up onto the roof of the vehicle, standing straight up. He's not kneeling. He's just standing straight up, and he's just firing a damn saw, just boom, boom, just firing a saw. And then whenever he'd run out of saw rounds, he'd reach and grab, Blackie the gunner. He'd grab Blackie's M203, and he just starts launching grenades into the houses. And then he put that down and reload that saw, and he starts launching saw. All this shit's exploding. I don't know how they didn't get him, because, I mean, those bullets were just hitting vehicles and pinging. And here Brandon was just standing on his 2 feet, just firing every weapon at his disposal, no cover, no nothing. And so then Stu's running around. And so those incompetent Afghans, what did the Afghans do? As soon as the fire started, they just jumped out of their pickup trucks and hid inside a ditch. Coward. I mean, they hid inside a ditch. They weren't firing their weapons. And that's when old Stu walks over there. He, get the fuck up and fire, you assholes. Trying to get them in the fight. But that was just dead weight, man. So, and then, like you said, well, hell, can we trust them? I mean, are they going to start firing at us? So then, this thing's going on for about an hour. And one round, I mean, these rounds, I mean, they were hitting into the vehicle. And let me give prop Ross, my buddy Ross was driving the MRAP, and he carried an M14 rifle. And so the M14 has a real powerful scope on it. And so he hung himself out the driver's side, and he was just scanning the area through that powerful scope on his M14. And he was yelling, shoot at the 9 o'clock, Ronnie B. Boom, boom, boom. There you go. Now spin it around this way, that way. He was just telling me where to go, and I laying it down. And then I ended up firing the 1,500 rounds that were stored in the vehicle. Before that happened, I had the vehicle or the machine gun jammed, and this is looking back, I'm just firing ruthlessly through this fucking machine gun, probably, amped up. Like, maybe if I was more experienced, I'd have been more hip to this thing's going to run hot, but I was just so amped up, reloading and firing. Probably should have changed the barrel. I don't know, man, but I fired that thing till it started jamming. Then I had to open that thing up, and I started just clearing the jam, get that thing going again, firing again. And then finally, I remember old Shane popped up and tossed some lubrication up in there, and I lubed it up. Boom. And fired all 1,500 rounds. One of their rounds hit inside the turret and ricocheted around in there and tore down the back of my armor. I didn't even realize it at the time, but it just grazed down the back of my armor. It didn't even touch the plate, just grazed the surface. And so then after I fired the 50, all I had left is, so now I'm down to my M4. So I fired all the machine gun rounds. Now I'm up in the turret with my M4 that I have 120 rounds on me, and I'm down to firing this thing. And if it goes much longer, I'm gonna have to find something else. And then finally, at some point, the people at Bagram, the main base, got hip to, oh shit, something's going on there. And then Stan and Hicks were coming home from leave, so they were at Bagram. And so they rushed into the fob. They heard something's going on with Charlie Company. So Stan and Hicks rushed into the fob to see what's going on. And obviously they're pissed because they're not with their dudes, and they're sitting fobbit. Fobbit was the slang for people that never go outside the wire, like fobbit officers. So the fobbit is like, yeah, they never go outside the wire. So Stan and Hicks are taking this in amongst fobbit officers. And that's when the call came into them that there was a KIA. And so then they look at their stuff and they ascertain that it's Julian. So Julian was that RPG that killed Julian, and it peppered the lieutenant with shrapnel. And so, once they found out we were in trouble, we got people killed and wounded on the ground, they started sending some assets. And that's when air supports, about an hour later, just fixed wing, all kinds of shit starts flying in. And now I don't know this. You know, I'm just a guy on the ground. I'm not sure what the specifics were at the time, but they decided not to drop the 500-pound bomb because the enemy was too danger close to drop the bomb. You know, I don't know, but so they. But the thing about though the enemy, as soon as they hear those jets, that air power, that's enough to scare them off. You know, so finally the jets swarmed in, and whatever remaining enemy that was still in the area, you know, they pieced out, and so that it was too hot and heavy to evacuate the wounded there. So we had to drive. We got those vehicles that were hit by IEDs and rockets. Were able to fire them up and get them running. I remember seeing old Sergeant Donald just covered in an insane amount of blood because he was driving the vehicle that got hit and he's blood all over him. Evidently, that rocket went inside of Julian and exploded from the inside out. You know, it's a horrific thing, man. And so we drive out of there. I'm up in the, and so as we're driving out, you know, I'm just pissed off. I didn't heard Manny Fresh, the platoon sergeant, say over the radio, "We've got a KIE," you know, the Argentine dude. So now that I know that we got a KIE, so as we're driving out of there, you know, I just popped up the turret with my M4 and just started spraying the house in front of me drive-by style like a damn gangster. You know, just windows, boom, boom, boom. And that's when old Manny Fresh goes, "Ceasefire, Bruce." And so we drove up out of there, got to the safe place. Second platoon hauled ass from another area. And another thing, we were on our own too because there was only 3 infantry platoons in our area, and at that particular time, the 2 other infantry platoons were somewhere else. So we didn't have a quick reaction force. We didn't have a QRF. I mean, we were flapping in the wind, baby. But second platoon did show up, and I noticed Harlan and Trubinsky were wounded. They were limping to the bird. D-Rum was wounded, limping to the bird. And then I seen Lieutenant Troutman, my beloved lieutenant. You know, I love that guy. He was former prior enlisted. And, you know, we call prior enlisted in the Marines Mustangs.
Yeah.
Because the Mustang is marched in the enlisted man's boots. Troutman was the example of first-class grade A officer leadership because he was competent and he cared more about us than his career. Could have been to his detriment because he would try to get us out of nonsense. So Troutman was limping to the bird with a giant bandage on him that Doc Lindley put on him. He had some massive shoulder back wound. And then all of a sudden I seen a stretcher, 2 guys carrying a stretcher covered in a poncho. And that was Julian. And they loaded him on the bird. And the shitty thing about it was he was scheduled for the next R&R. He was, and we had already been there at that point 8 straight months. And he had the second to the last R&R. I had the last one. So he was scheduled for the R&R bird that coincidentally took off the next morning. The very next morning after the firefight, Julian's R&R bird took off that he should have been on. But instead, you know, he was headed back to West Virginia in a flag draped coffin. He scheduled that. I'm pretty sure he scheduled that R&R to be there for his daughter's first birthday. You know, that's how he had it planned to be there for her first birthday, and he didn't make it.
What was he like?
Julian is in his mid-20s, and he was very spiritual. He was a Christian. Just to give you an example of that, one time when we were on the little outpost and we were all huddled up watching a movie. And I remember it was at the time we were watching Religulous by Bill Maher, Bill Maher's Religulous. And I just remember after the movie cut out, somebody just blurted out of nowhere. They said, "You know, religion's good for nothing." Just, he said, just blurted after the movie quit. He goes, religion's good for fucking nothing. And then Julian just said, "Accept hope," just real calm and clean. And religion's good for fucking nothing. And then Julian goes, "Accept hope." And that kind of resonated with me. And that's the 2 words, "accept hope." So one thing that, he was mature. He was a family man. He wasn't into the party scene like a lot of us. He was just a square family man. He even said before he went, he wanted to fight for families over there, even the Afghan families. But just a very mature Christian, spiritual guy. And when I heard him saying that, accept hope. So, after he was killed, it makes me think back, and I know that he was solid in his Christian faith. I know if any of us were ready, he was ready, and as bad as, leaving that family behind. Uh, but if anybody was like, I wasn't squared away, I wasn't totally sure about my faith over there. I battled with that, and it's a hell of a place to battle with it in a war zone. But, I grew up a Christian, but I just battled with it. Julian, he didn't battle with it. He was 100% Christian. So, um, God bless him, man. And if any of us were ready to go that day, he was the one who was ready to go. And I just remember how calm he was when I just felt chaos.